Welcome back to Real Repairs for Real Customers. I've had a question, and you may have had it too. What is the mechanism by which the current pathogen in the news is disarmed? When we disinfect a surface, what goes on with respects to the virus itself? Certainly, that kind of information will help us in making decisions regarding our interaction with the surfaces that we're cleaning and our interaction with people too. So I did some research. I don't have the answers, but I wanted to share some resources that I came up with, and I'm going to list these resources also in the description box so that you can look them up for yourself, and I really do encourage you to do so. The first resource I found was this one, which is the healthleadersmedia.com. And what they have done is they have taken information from the EPA, that is the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And they're describing disinfecting enveloped viruses. Well, what does that mean? Well, that's a good question. And here is a wonderful statement, a very encouraging statement, as they've said here. Perhaps one of the few encouraging aspects of the current pathogen in the news outbreak is that the virus is enveloped. Enveloped viruses are the least resistant to inactivation by disinfection. Least resistant, which means that they can be inactivated. And this is really great news. Unfortunately, this kind of news you don't get in the media, but this is the kind of news that we would like to hear because we want to take responsibility for ourselves. It further states that the structure of these viruses include a lipid envelope, which is easily compromised by most disinfectants. Once the lipid envelope is damaged, the integrity of the virus is compromised, thereby neutralizing its capacity to infect. So we want to know, what is this lipid envelope and how can it be compromised? The term lipid is a term that we know. It's not a foreign term to us because when we get a blood test done, our doctor will want to look at our lipid panel. I've just had one done, and this lipid panel is searching for lipoproteins in your blood. And so you are quite likely interested in seeing what your levels of cholesterol are. Your HDL, your LDL, your triglycerides, your VLDL, and your total cholesterol, which mine was a couple of numbers high this time. And I was asked to limit my sugar intake, my fatty food intake, and fast food intake. So that doesn't involve any changes for me because my lifestyle really fits the description for a lower cholesterol. I think the one thing that I could add, though, is more exercise. So I've started running errands. So this term lipid is something that we are familiar with. And so let's find out about this lipid envelope. We think about the fatty acids probably. Here's another site that I'll also include the link in the description box. And they describe this envelope as a lipid bilayer around the capsid, that is, around the virus itself, that contains viral glycoproteins and host cell proteins. Now, to get a further definition on lipid, Wiki says here that although the term lipid is sometimes used as a synonym for fats, fats are a subgroup of lipids called triglycerides. Lipids also encompass molecules such as fatty acids and their derivatives, as well as other sterol-containing metabolites such as cholesterol. So we get a general idea. We know, have a familiarity with cholesterol and how that affects us. And so we sort of know really what we're talking about here with lipids. It also uses the term here glycoproteins, and we got a definition of that from Wiki as well. Glycoproteins are also often integral membrane proteins, where they play a role in cell-to-cell interactions. So they're critical for binding the protein to the cells. It's like proteins want to interconnect like Legos. So this is why these glycoproteins are getting the focus of our attention as well. This website goes on to say that the presence of the lipid bilayer makes nearly all enveloped viruses vulnerable to rapid inactivation by organic solvents, for example, alcohol, detergents, and dry heat. So it lists three things here that come into focus for us as mobile technicians. Because when we think about the surfaces that we're working on, let's take a leather seat or a leather steering wheel, a vinyl steering wheel, plastic door panel, plastic dash, whatever we're working on, we are cleaning that anyway with detergents. So for about the last 40 years, we've been suggesting a particular cleaning detergent for these seats. And what is that detergent doing? It is stripping these lipids or these fatty acids from the pathogen itself. That's encouraging. Also, it mentions alcohol, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And it mentions dry heat, and we'll address that in just a minute as well. So we're on the right track. What we are using for cleaning all of our repairs and surfaces are the detergents that will destroy this lipid bilayer. And if we can destroy the lipids and these glycoproteins, that means that we've destroyed the mechanism by which they attach, so they no longer can bind, and so they're rendered harmless to us. That's good information here, isn't it? It would be like the capsule that flies out to the space station, losing its docking mechanism, and then you're not getting resupplied. So here's another site, Health Leaders Media. Actually, this is the very first site we went to, and they had this further to say. By the way, this site is very good. If you read the whole thing, I really do encourage it. It recommends this: routinely clean all frequently touched surfaces in the workplace, such as workstations, countertops, doorknobs, using a detergent or soap and water before disinfection. This is what we're doing anyway by our recommended cleaning step. So we're on the right track. Wear disposable gloves. We're already wearing disposable gloves, not for the pathogen, but for the cleaners and the disinfectants. Wear disposable gloves when cleaning and disinfecting surfaces. Gloves should be discarded after each cleaning. If reusable gloves are used, those gloves should be dedicated for cleaning and disinfection of surfaces for the pathogen in question and should not be used for other purposes. Consult the manufacturer's instructions for cleaning and disinfection products used. Clean hands immediately after gloves are removed. For disinfection, diluted household bleach solutions, alcohol solutions with at least 70% alcohol, and most common EPA-registered household disinfectants should be effective. So it's recommending at least 70% alcohol. And going back to what we previously looked at here, where it was recommended alcohol being one of the organic solvents recommended, this is also the next step that we use in our cleaning and prep. we prep with 99% isopropanol for two reasons, not for disinfecting reasons, but the main reason is the 99% is thirsty for water, and so it's going to have the maximum uptake of water from our cleaner residue. It'll dry out the seat. It'll remove any traces of the detergent that might leave a slimy or filmy feeling surface to that. It's going to gobble that up and take it away. So that's how effective the 99% isopropanol is. We're already using that, which means that when we finish cleaning and prepping the seats, it is also disinfected. You could eat right off of that seat, which reminds me, you could eat off of my kitchen floor. It's so clean. The thing is, you don't know whether that was from yesterday or today. So if we go down to the next article I found, there's been some discussion about UV radiation. And this particular article was written to discuss the effect of UV radiation on the lipids and proteins, and this was a study mostly of bacteria and not of viruses. But I thought it was interesting that it mentioned here that in this context that exposure to UV radiation would cause alterations in lipid composition. And from our experience, it seems like we already realize that the UV radiation destroys just about everything. So something left out in the sun is just not going to survive. So this makes sense based on our experience. So while we're introducing some new ideas, it follows right in line with the experience we have in our business already. There's been some new discussion since I attempted to reveal the results of my inquiries into this. And so I did some research into the local immediate news, and into the world news currently, I should say. And Al Jazeera was one that came up, highlighting this particular article in the news, where it says, U.S. scientists say that the pathogen in question dies the fastest when it is exposed to direct sunlight. And here's the direct quote. The virus dies quickest in the presence of direct sunlight. This is what William Bryan had said, and he is a science and technology advisor to the Department of Homeland Security. So there have been new studies about what can kill the pathogen, and of course we know the virus is not a living mechanism. It's a protein particle, so it can't be killed biologically speaking. But sometimes you'll hear health professionals talking about killing the virus in the sense that you would say, well, kill the light. And so you would take care of it. So this is really what that means in that context. So when he says killing the virus here, that's really what he's talking about, killing the virus. So just to give the other side of the coin, the article went on to mention that Dr. Margaret Harris from the World Health Organization, the WHO, also told the same news outlet that the evidence is not supporting the sunlight theory. So there's some open discussion going on, and that's okay because in early stages, people are conducting studies and they're getting reviewed by their peers, and we try to duplicate these studies, and as more time goes on, I'm sure that more light will be shed onto that. Also, the same article mentioned that researchers also found that isopropyl alcohol was a more effective disinfectant than bleach. So, as a result of my inquiry, I thought it was very reassuring that we as mobile technicians are on the right track. Both the detergents that we're using and the alcohol that we're using are prime materials to be used in disinfecting or disarming, or killing, if you will, the current pathogen. So that's very good information. In addition, one new term that was new to me, and I like the definition here, a fomite. What is a fomite? Is any inanimate object that when contaminated with or exposed to infectious agents, such as the current pathogen, can transfer disease to a new host, and we are the new host. So the seats, the steering wheels, the plastic door panels, the dash, anything that we're working on in the car would be considered a fomite. Here's the definition from WebMD. They did a study on different types of surfaces, and there are many listed in this article if you would like to look it up. But since we're talking about plastics, this example with plastics would include packaging like milk containers and detergent bottles, subway and bus seats, backpacks, elevator buttons. The pathogen lives on these surfaces for 2 to 3 days, meaning that when you get in a car where someone else has been in the car, within the last 2 to 3 days, these pathogens could still be active. Also means that our gloves that we're wearing are also collectors of the pathogen. Our gloves are fomites, and our gloves risk transferring the disease to the new host, which is us. So when we finish working, the main thing we have to be concerned about is the very gloves that we're wearing. Now, as we're working, of course, we're working within our products that will disarm the pathogen and render it ineffective. However, as we go on working throughout the day wearing the same pair of gloves, we can also wash our gloves using the same alcohol, just as we would wash our hands. And then, of course, not forgetting that when we do dispose of the gloves by turning them inside out, peeling them down from the wrist down, we can do as the other article mentioned up here, to clean the hands. Here we are, clean hands immediately after gloves are removed. There we go. So that's a good idea. So this information is really helpful to us. And I particularly enjoyed the description here about the fomites. So that's helpful. So as we go about working, we can take heed. Here I am doing a repair in an RV where I'm going to be in close proximity to other people. I'm repairing the headliner here, so I need a little extra light on the subject. And here I'm working in a van. And one thing I'd like to mention also here is the fact that if someone has just been driving this vehicle, the air within this vehicle could be teeming with our current pathogen. So you might find it a good idea to open up all the doors and let it air out really well. And that way we decrease the chances of exposure. It's also been theorized, and we'll have to see how this plays out in more subsequent studies, but it's been theorized that a low viral load might lead to a lesser infection and at least let the body build up antibodies ahead of time before the virus takes over too much. Whereas a heavy viral load initially could result in the start of a severe infection. So if that's true, then it makes sense to air out the vehicles before we go working in them headlong. And I got to give a shout out to my sister-in-law, Linda, who supplies me with my PPE. She has seen my video where I was wearing PPE and thought it was really in a deplorable condition. And so she sent me a whole box of everything I would ever need for safety. And so I have no excuse to not wear safety equipment. She comes from a family, very proud to say that they are extremely generous and caring, loving family from the old country. And it's really been a remarkable thing, especially to be recipient of such kindness. However, if she saw this picture, she would notice that I'm not wearing any of the eye protection that she sent along, and so I'm sure that I'll be getting a text and a scolding for this, which I rightly deserve, because, as I have a little saying, please take heed, thoughtless deeds lead to bleeds. So I hope you found this little segment interesting and helpful, because we all need to take personal responsibility, and it certainly is easier if we can understand the mechanism behind why things work like they do. And hopefully next time we'll have a regular repair video. Thanks for watching.